So it's chapter 7, verse 23 of the Gita. Antavatu palam desam tadbhavatyalpanedasam devan devaya joyanti madbhakta yanti mamapi. But the reward gained by these people of limited understanding is temporary. The worshippers of the demigods will go to the demigods, but my devotees will come to me. First and foremost, we have to understand the system that we live in. And the system that we live in is actually very simple to understand. You get exactly what you ask for. There's no complication to it. Whatever you want, that's precisely what God gives you. The only thing that appears to be complicated is that we convince ourselves that we want something when in actual fact you want something else more. And you can delude yourself with your claims of what it is that you want, but you can't delude him. So he'll always know what it is that you truly want. And what that means is that if you have competing things or interests in your life, which is perfectly normal, one of them will always reign supreme over the other. Whatever it is that you've grown most attached to, whatever it is that you've grown most connected to, whatever you've engaged your mind with the most. And it's always in moments of danger or in moments of necessity that those things manifest. When you're not thinking about it. So people always say when you're about to die, your whole life flashes before your eyes, right? Well, why do you think that is? Because your life is the thing you're most attached to. So naturally, when everything's about to end, the thing you think of is the thing you least want to let go of. You think of your greatest attachment. Same thing with fear. Whenever you're put in a situation of fear, automatically you will reveal to yourself what it is that you most fear to lose, because that's whatever you will think of, right? And so, in that sense, God always gives us what we want. If you've spent your life falling in love with yourself, which is quite encouraged by most people and has its uses, then when you die, what do you think you're going to get? Another self to love. Because that's what you wanted. What version of yourself did you fall in love with? Well, your mind, your personality, your body, your characteristics, then no problem. He'll just give you another body. If that's what you want so much, I'll give you another one. Or maybe you don't love yourself. Maybe you love the world. You love life, which is, again, another positive thing everybody tells you to do. Love life. Okay, do that. And then when you die, you'll say, but God, I'm so in love with this world. Like, no problem, I'll give it back to you, don't worry. So you take another life in this world because you love it. So why should he give you anything else other than what you ask for? Or maybe you love someone, which is also perfectly fine and also encouraged, massively encouraged. And then you die and you miss that someone that you're going to leave behind. And so God says, no problem, I'll put you two together again. And again. And again. Because you want it. You both want it. You ask for it. And so the world rotates around whatever it is that you want. Whatever it is that you love. And then we sit here and we say, oh, but you know, now that we're spiritual, we want something else. Maybe so. But you cannot convince God with a statement here and there. Because he's not fooled by these things. Human beings, maybe we can fool each other. Maybe you can even fool yourself for some time. But in truth, if you really want something, you don't need to be told to go after it. You don't need to be told to desire it. You will automatically do it, right? Does anybody really have to remind you to eat lunch and dinner? You don't. Why? Because you want it. And you want it enough. Instead of being reminded, you will remind people. You will say, hey, isn't it time for lunch? Isn't it time for dinner? Isn't it time to go to sleep? Again, you need to be reminded to sleep. But when it comes to japa, or when it comes to anything of that sort, at least for some time, I'm not saying for everybody, I'm not saying all the time, I don't have to be dramatic about it. But we'll say, oops, I forgot. So again, we have to be understanding of the situation we're in. You start off from a place in which your mind is not programmed to be attracted to these things. Your mind finds an aversion to God. God's not an attractive proposition to your mind. It really isn't. And so what do? We actually try to make it more attractive. We dress them up in fancy clothes and we chant beautiful songs with nice melodies and we cook tasty food. But this is all just trying to convince your mind to be attracted. Because it's all an outer shell. Even those things don't matter ultimately. Because you take Krishna's clothes off, Krishna's still there. You cook not nice food and offer it, it's still prasad. You sing a bad song, it's still God's names. Right? But it's not attractive to our senses, it's not attractive to our mind, and so then we're going to go, Maybe I don't want to go to prayer because the singing is not so nice. Or maybe I don't take so much prasad today because it's not so tasty. Or maybe I don't focus on the deity because he's not looking so beautiful today. These are the kind of things that happen to us and excuses that we accept as valid. Oh, today I didn't go to prayer, because my favorite singer wasn't singing. But was God's name being chanted? Okay. So what's your problem? How many times I've caught myself, the prasad plate is going around, I'm looking to see what is on the plate. Forget the principle that it's prasad, it's like, what prasad is it? And you're like being very selective, you're looking around the plate, right? This stuff happens. So again, you see how programmed you are to be a certain way. You see how programmed we are to value things that are superficial. And yet, the Acharyas have always known this, Gurudev has always known this, and so we use that attraction to the senses in our advantage. And so we do decorate, we do package God in a nice way. That is true. And so hopefully, throughout our life, we come to understand at some point that material things are not worth pursuing with the passion that we are told to. So when you are growing up, be honest with yourselves. When you were growing up, how many times were you told by people what kind of jobs you should have? What kind of achievements you should strive to make? And 99 times out of 100, are they not some kind of materially prosperous position? Of course it is. Of course it is. Because that is our understanding of success. That is our understanding of, you've done well. How much money do you have? How safe are you? How much are you able to provide for those that will follow after you? What is your reputation? Are you held in high esteem by your community and your society? Is it something that I can be proud of as a parent? And yet these things mean next to nothing when death comes knocking on your door. This is what Krishna is talking about in this verse. He's talking about ultimately, what do you achieve? He's not talking about what you achieve in this relative world. He's talking ultimately. When you die, then what? Then who have you made proud? Your parents? They're gone. Society? Also gone. How much are you able to provide? No bank accounts post-death. So only one person to make proud, only one person that you can potentially be with, but his qualifications and requirements are quite different. In fact, very different. In fact, the absolute opposite. How do you know that? Well, simple. Ask Guruji. Take the time to ever ask Guruji, Guruji, in your opinion, what's the best job you can have? He's already answered it. He said to clean toilets. Best job in the world. Anybody of you ever grew up with the aspiration to be a toilet cleaner? I doubt it. Any parents saying, hey, you know what? If my child becomes a toilet cleaner, I'll be so happy. I also doubt it. And yet, in his eyes, that's the best. Why? Because of what it promotes, because of what it requires from you, because of what it does not do to you. It does not amplify your ego. It does not give you an inflated sense of self-worth and pride. It does not do any of the bad things, and yet it allows you to do one thing, and that is to serve. Because service is what we're all here to do, in one way or another. But you don't want to take the negative side of that coin, which is to think yourself better, or too good, or too special, etc. So when we see that our values, and the values of our parents and our society, etc., have literally got Gurudev's values upside down, not just a little bit different, completely upside down, then you start to see how much trust you should put in the opinions of people, and in the opinions of society, and in the opinions of what you've been trained to be. How much are they really worth if they've been guiding you your entire life to be something which Guruji essentially says is the worst thing for you? When he asks you to be the exact opposite of that, how much can you trust that then? And why do we still care then about the opinion of people who live within that system? Unless you too want to live within that system. Unless you too want to fit those criteria and those styles of life that tell you that fame and power are things worth pursuing, when our context of life here says those are the biggest traps of the human existence. And so you choose what system you want to live in. And don't think that because we are now engaging in spiritual activities that those things don't apply to us. You are acquiring spiritual knowledge. That doesn't exempt you from the pride. You're acquiring spiritual talent as a musician or whatever it may be. That doesn't exempt you from the pride. It's the same game, unless you don't play it. And so, here comes the biggest challenge. How do you escape it? How do you escape the longing for recognition and fame and approval and praise and respect and ultimately love in the human conception of it? How do you escape the shackles, the chains that bind us to these things? When even if you turn your back on them, they come running after you. It's not so simple as to say, I don't want you anymore. They still want you. They are so committed to you, those things. They will run after you to your grave. I always give the example, you can try to be a humble servant and say, I don't want praise, I don't want recognition. And then you know what happens? You will become recognized as the humble servant who doesn't want praise and recognition. You can't escape it. You say, me? No, I don't do it for the fame. Then you'll become famous as the person who doesn't do it for the fame. How you can escape? When that is how every single person is programmed to be. This is why we say, when we sit here and do these talks and it's finished, what do we all automatically do? We clap. Why? Because subconsciously this is what we think everyone wants. To be acknowledged, recognition, praise, right? And if somebody says, don't do it, there's immediately one of two reactions. Oh, look how great that person is. They don't want the praise. Well, now you've given them praise anyway in your mind. Or, oh, look how ungrateful this person is. So stuck up, thinks that, is above all these things. So again, reputations are formed. Opinions are projected. And here we are playing these games with each other. And then Krishna asked, and what happens when you die? What do you get from all these games? What do you get from all this? The devotees of the demigods, they'll go to them, but my devotees come to me. What does it take to be a devotee of Krishna? That's the important question. Everything else is irrelevant. If we want him as we claim to. And of course, sitting here in Vrindavan, I think it makes sense for us to assume. I will assume that we all want him. to varying degrees of intensity. So then what does it mean? Well, it means, first of all, that you have to understand a few things. There are many things for us to fall in love with in our lives. And there are, I would say, some more obviously wrong. Like, you don't need to be told, don't fall in love with cars and houses and clothes and all those things, right? Those are very superficial things. Everybody here would be like, of course, that doesn't apply to me, right? I don't need to do that. But there's more subtle things, like falling in love with your mind, as I've already highlighted. Falling in love with the mind of another. Falling in love with the idea of God. And then falling in love with God as He actually is. And the most, let's say, trapping or difficult to avoid is the second one. It's falling in love with the idea of God. Because you either love God and approach God by what you define Him to be, or you love and approach God by what He tells you He is. And in one of them, it's still egocentric, and in the other one, it's selfless. One is far more attractive than the other, one is far easier than the other, one is far less confrontational than the other. I'll give you a really good example. When people approach Guruji, in their mind, they've probably accepted that he is in some form or another transcendental, meaning beyond their own self, or beyond what level that they are presently at, or beyond this material plane to some degree. Otherwise, why would you approach him in the first place? So you have this conception in your mind to some degree. But together with that conception, you also have an expectation of how he should behave. The things he is allowed to do, the things he's not allowed to do, the things he's supposed to say, the things he's not supposed to say. A sort of behavior code, right? But you have to be so aware, what are you attracting by doing that? You're essentially saying that a conditioned jiva, a conditioned soul such as ourselves, can set the standard of behavior for an unconditioned soul, for a liberated soul to conform to. And if that soul were to do that, that would be a tragedy. Imagine if the liberated souls would all behave according to how the conditioned souls wanted them to. Then what's the point of them being liberated? If they anyway have to conform to your box of expectations. And if they don't, what is the first thing we do? We criticize. We say, you're not proper. You're not a suitable guru for me, because you didn't conform to what I expected from you. And you might not say it, but you think it. You think to yourself, Guruji, please don't, behave in a way that I can't approve of. But you don't understand what you're doing when you say something like that. And even now as I'm saying it, you might be looking at yourself and thinking, do I do that? Yes, you do. I'll say that quite confidently. In some way or another, you have a set of expectations of how he's supposed to be. Because you know why? I'm sure all of us to some degree or another have at some point felt upset or disappointed in one of his behaviors. And even that once is the sign that you have a certain box of where you expect him to live in. And every time he steps out of that box, you react negatively. If you would have zero negative reactions to anything he's ever done, then okay, you can start to say, I placed him in no box. I let him be as he decides to be, as the free person should. Well, but that's the point. Yeah, but that's not your problem, that's their problem. Guruji, but that's the point. Guruji doesn't stand to lose anything by all of this. We do. This is what Krishna's talking about. It's where we're going to go. It's not where he's going to go. It's where we're going to go. And so what we condition ourselves to is extremely important. Because we do the same thing to God. Do you know how many times I've sat with people, very learned people, very advanced people, so-called, and I say something like, hey, let me tell you about the incredible things I've experienced with Guruji. And their response is, but where are those things in scripture? So basically translation, I'll tell you what they're saying. can you please not break my box? Thank you. Can you just please put him back in the box? Because if you break that box, I'm going to be very upset with you right now. Because I won't know how to handle it. I won't know how to compute it and how to communicate it to my fellow brother and sister who also has that box. And so I'm going to need you to conform to that box, please, because then we can all just be in our comfort zones. Thank you very much, Jai Gurudev, Haribol, etc., etc. And so we live a transcendental culture that ends up making it as material as anything else. We want to suppress God, we want to suppress the free souls. And then, what do you think you will actually get? You will get a cheap version of the reality that you seek. Don't think just because you found a guru like Gurudev, or you're worshipping a God like Krishna, that you're going to get them in their fullness. You're going to get the version that you allow yourself to see and get. I repeat, you will get the version of Gurudev and of Bhagwan that you allow yourself to get. If you place no limits on it, then you will get the no limit version, which is the true version. If you place your limits, then that is all you will allow yourself to see. And that's the biggest tragedy. You see, when Krishna speaks in the Gita, he talks about Maya. He talks about how the ignorant fail to see him in this body, in this human body. But he doesn't say, I specifically choose to hide myself on purpose, or I make it harder for them. No, he makes it equally hard for everybody to see him. But the people who approach with the various differing qualities and various differing levels of sincerity. I've said the same thing. People come and they ask me, I went for darshan with your Guruji, and I didn't feel those things that you said I should feel. As if it's somehow my fault. Because I told them that other people have felt A, B, and C. They felt D, E, and F, and now they're saying why I didn't feel A, B, and C. And so the first conclusion is, well, he must have given me a different blessing. No. Perhaps you approach that from a different mindset as the person who approached and felt A, B, and C. So then we look at theology and we say, is God some kind of chameleon of sorts, a flexible person that treats everybody differently, differentiates between everybody, picks favorites, has enemies? No. That is not what we hear. That is not what we see. When we study scripture, we see that actually God is not moved by neither praise nor criticism, and he is equal to all. As the Paramatma, he's not like, oh, I'm going to pervade everything except that person. I don't like their face. No, he pervades everyone equally. But he is not felt equally by everyone. He is not perceived equally by everyone. And that is on the individual. That is not on Krishna. That is not on Paramatma. That is on you. And your way of approaching him, and your way of understanding what he's doing. And so in truth, when Krishna says, when you devote yourself to anything, to that you will go, but my devotees come to me, I come back to this point again and again. You have to understand what it takes to be a devotee of Krishna. And in summary, I could say so many things, but in summary it means offer no resistance. Offer no resistance to Krishna when he decides to mold you as he sees fit. You have to be like clay in his hands that says, you make of me whatever you so wish. Because if you do not, if there is even 1% of resistance, there will never be surrender. There will never be trust. And then we have broken the fundamental condition that Krishna has asked of us. In Charama Shloka, he says, Masuchaha, last line, he says, do not worry, do not fear, do not grieve, do not doubt, whatever way you wish to translate it. But the minute we say, Krishna, do anything with me, except B and C, please, don't want those things, but everything else you can do. Then he says, then you might as well tell me I could do nothing. If I can't do everything, then you might as well tell me I could do nothing. Because what is this? Oh, I'll love you up until a certain point where I'm not allowed anymore. And I'm supposed to feel like this is a true relationship of surrender to one another. So, to be like clay, what are the parts of yourself that you have to surrender? It's your mind. Your body is less interesting. It's your mind. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. And so, the next thing is to understand, how does this mind function? It's a mystery, right? Like, the mind is such a monster, such a creature that we're all so afraid of. But it's actually very understandable. And it works in patterns. It's not so mysterious. Let's really simplify it. You have a hard drive in there. It's called Chitta. It's your storage of all your memories, all your experiences, all of these things. It's just there, sitting there, accumulating, carrying from life to life. And then you have your manas, which is your sense responding mind, in a sense. So you see the world and you respond. Respond how? Based on your previous information inside that hard drive. So then ask yourself the question, you think you've got very materialistic responses programmed in there, or surrendering responses programmed in there, spiritual responses? And for the most people, the overwhelming majority is going to be materialistic responses. Because we've been here, 100,000 times, maybe 1 million lives, who knows? And so, when you finally understand that I have a huge back catalogue of patterns, habits, behaviors that don't help me in my current objective, then you know that you need to start replacing those. That's one job. And then comes the second job. Who's governing all this? Like, who's the boss in there? And the answer is ahamkara. It's the false ego. And what is its number one defining feature? The number one defining feature of the ego is that it serves itself, first and foremost, and then others. But first and foremost, it serves itself, its own needs, or what it perceives to need. So to combat these two problems, a back catalogue of bad decisions and a false ego that's in charge, you need to start making better decisions to replace the bad ones in your programming, and you need to somehow subdue this ego. And then you ask yourself the sincere question, looking in the mirror, can I subdue my own ego? And the answer will be, hopefully, no, because that's the truth. Because who's going to subdue that ego? The mind that's controlled by that ego? It's like trying to put out fire with fire. You're stuck. And this is where acharyas such as Ramanuja have said, that is why Sharanagati is the process, surrender. Because you require something outside of yourself to defeat that boss. And it's such a sneaky personality, that ego. It will even convince you that you can defeat it, just so that you waste your time trying. Just to keep you in its grip, so to speak. So the quicker you understand that although you are powerful to change a whole lot of things about yourself, like this whole programming you've given yourself, there is one thing fundamentally you cannot change, no matter how much you try. And that is who's in charge of that mind. But what you can get is the glimpse, the chance to perceive a reality beyond that. And when you get that chance, hang on to it, attach yourself to it. And that reality will grace you to overcome that ego. That is the Guru's job. Why else would we say in Vaishnavism that Guru is a necessity, not an option? Guru is not something nice to have as an add-on to make things faster. He is a necessity. So if he's a necessity, what is the need? The need is this. The need is the false ego that cannot, will not program its own death. And so now that I've made this clear, can you understand what Guruji is actually here to do? It's not the lovey-dovey things that we hope that he's here to do. That comes after. Or that comes at the beginning. Like we said, you have to dress Krishna with nice clothes. You have to make nice prasad. So that the concept becomes attractive to us. But behind that, there's something far more real. Behind the tasty prasad, there is the grace of the prasad. Behind the attractive Krishna, there is just Krishna standing naked in front of you. Behind the sweet words and care of the Guru, there is the work of the Guru to overcome your ego. And it's not like we make it easier for him. We fight him. We put up our defenses and we say, try me. Let's go. Is it not? If it wasn't, we would not even come up with words like process. Oh, I'm in process right now. This is translation 4. I don't like what Guru is doing with me. I don't like what Krishna is doing with me. So I'll just call it process. Makes me feel better about myself. If you were accepting of it all, you wouldn't call it a process. You would say, oh, this is wonderful. Everything's going exactly as it should. Exactly as it should. And so Guruji was sitting with us 2-3 nights ago, a few people only, and he was talking about this, and he said, you know, those who truly understand what the Guru's job is, they will never see suffering as suffering. They will find God's grace in that suffering. They will understand why it has been given. Because they understand the predicament they're in to begin with. They understand what position you are to begin with that he's trying to fix, and therefore you understand the necessity for that suffering. The suffering is the perception of the situation. It's the ego's perception of it. The ego is certainly suffering. Because the ego is saying, I'm losing control. I'm losing my grip on the situation. I am being put into situations which I can't fully comprehend. And when we don't comprehend situations, we become afraid of those situations. Fear comes with a lack of knowledge. When we don't understand, we are afraid. And this we don't know how to articulate very well. We don't know how to define these things. And so we just call it all kinds of nonsense words like process, where nobody even knows what this means. But somehow we all just understand each other, like, yeah, sure, process, I get you. What it really means is I'm going through a tough period where I don't understand what's happening to me and I don't like it. But that's your ego. Yourself, something that sometimes you feel beyond that, is somehow rejoicing at this. Yourself somehow knows that although this is so uncomfortable and difficult on the outside, something great is happening. And that's why I can't seem to walk away from it. Even though my external reality has become so uncomfortable. Yet there's something real happening here. And if you can hang on to that understanding, develop that understanding, thrive in that understanding, then you're starting to get it. And you won't run away from those situations. You will welcome them. You will proactively analyze them. What is the lesson I'm trying to be taught here? What is the lesson the Gurudev is trying to give me? And I won't repeat the same mistake a million times. But if you stay at the surface level suffering of the ego, you will run away. You will convince yourself of all kinds of interpretations of what's happening. Oh, you know, he's actually bashing me, not because he's disappointed with me, but because he wants other people to not be, you know, so jealous, and so they feel like I also get beaten up, so that it becomes fairer for everybody. And all kinds of nonsense explanations that I've heard. People can justify things in amazing ways. And then there's always that most obvious one, which is, or maybe he just wasn't very happy with you and tried to teach you a lesson. How about that? Right? That works too. So understand how your ego works to protect what it values, and how Gurudev works to protect what he values, and how those two things do not match, and therefore friction, conflict will always be there as long as you are looking at the situation from the perspective of that false ego. Then he will be the tough guy, the bad guy. When you switch that, you will see he is the greatest mercy you have ever received in your life. Because he is the one person that is consciously challenging the worst parts of you so that you can actually get a taste of what is possible beyond that ego. Something that otherwise you would only hear about in fairy tales. Have you realized that by Gurudev's grace, things like Harry Potter actually become our reality? Just saying. Magic is actually happening all around you. you are going beyond what everyone else is able to do. When I say everyone else, I mean those who are not on the similar path. Don't believe your mind when your mind tells you, take a few steps back, or this isn't right, or I need balance. That's the worst one. When your mind says, oh, I should be balanced about all this. All it's saying is, make sure you give me as much attention as you're giving God, huh? Make sure you're giving me as much of your time as you're giving to the Guru. Don't do that, because that's not how he loves. He doesn't love you in a balanced way. He doesn't say, oh, I'll love you, but only half the time, because, got to keep it balanced. Or I'll help you 50% of the time. So every 2 problems you have, I'll help you with 1. Just to, keep the balance. No, he says, I take care of everything. I'm taking you to the final destination, not close to it, not halfway there, all the way. I commit myself to it. So we have to commit ourselves accordingly as well. And if you were to know the value of the 2 sides, you would understand how absolutely disproportional this is. Because how many human relationships have you had in your life? In this life, let alone all your lives, but in this life. Friends, family, partners, 10, 20, 50, 100, whatever your number is. Why have you had so many and you're still here? Because not one of them is able to actually take you to your destination. They're just giving you a little glimpse of something. Some take you even backwards. And then we find one, if we're lucky in our lives, that we think, you know what? I think that you can actually take me to the end of all this. That I don't need to find another one after you. And if you're so lucky as to do that, why would you be so foolish as to not maximize it? Why is what I don't understand. Why people who are otherwise extremely intelligent and can see this and nod their heads when I say these words, then behave the way they do. Wasting their time with nonsense. Don't think I haven't said these words to myself looking in the mirror too. I have plenty of times. This isn't finger pointing. Because everything that you think is somehow okay and reasonable and understandable to engage with, just sit with that thought for 5 minutes and really reflect on it. And see how absolutely black and white Krishna makes the situation in chapter 7, verse 23. He says ultimately, have you sat and really thought about what's going to happen to you when it's all said and done? When this life is over, and it can be today, it can be tomorrow, you don't know. Who here knows when they're going to die? Not a clue, right? We're all going to get coronavirus next week and we're finished. Who knows? Right? Who knows? So then when it's all said and done, what's happening to you? What's your heart most attracted to? What's your mind most attached to? What do you want? Have you ever had that question asked to you by Guruji? What do you want? I remember the first time he asked me that question. I was 15 years old. He said to me, what do you want? What do you think popped in my head at that time? God? No. To transcend my ego? No. To be humble? No. I asked him, what school should I go to? That's what I asked him. Because I didn't like the school I was at the time. And I was just like, Guruji, what I want to know is what school I should go to. Now, at the time, I thought this was a really good question. Afterwards, I just reflect back and laugh. So here I have somebody who, of the few beings in the universe who can actually take me to God, and I'm sat here asking him which school I should register in. I remember the second time he asked me what I wanted. This was a year later. And I said to him, I want you. Why? Because I had been told by other devotees that this is the smart answer to give. Not because it was actually my answer. I had no clue what that even meant. But I just wanted to seem spiritual. I wanted to seem intelligent. I wanted to pretend to be wiser than I was. And so I said, Guruji, I want you. And he looked at me like, really? And immediately I start worrying. I'm like, well, what does it mean? But I didn't say it because, then you blow your cover. right? You're not actually wise. And so I told him, yeah, I just want you. He's like, okay. Well, let's see. So I leave. Then I remember the third time he asked me. This time I was going to prison. And now he asked me, what do you want? And I said to him, I want to not go to prison. Because I've been arrested. And I told him the only thing on my mind, which was just keep me out of prison and we're good, right? And what did he do? He kept me out of prison. And then I asked him a question for the first time. I asked him, what do you want of me? Because in my mind, it was like repayment. You did what I asked for, now let me offer you something. And so I said, Guruji, what do you want from me? I'll do anything. And I remember the immediate feeling of regret. Immediate, instant. I uttered those words, ask me for anything. And my mind said, what on earth did you just say? And he even double checked. He was on the phone with me and he double checked. He said to me, really? You'll do anything? I can't backtrack now. You just got me out of prison. I can't, be ungrateful. So I said, yes, with the most unconfident yes of all time. And my immediate fear was he's going to ask me to become a monk, which was my worst nightmare. Like I thought, this is the last thing in all the universes that I want to do with my life. And that's exactly what I thought he was going to ask me to do. He said, shh, he's going to ask me to become a monk. Damn, my career is over. And he didn't do that. He asked me to stop drinking alcohol. Because that was the reason I'd gotten arrested. Because I was drunk off my face. Right? And I said, really? That's it? I was so relieved. I was so relieved because I was so convinced he was going to ask me to become a monk. And he said, yep, that's it. And I said, done, deal. No problem. Water, here I come. Juice. We're good. And I remember celebrating the fact that I had not become a monk. And then I sat a day later and I thought to myself, I just gave somebody the freedom to ask me anything and instead they told me to do something for my benefit. He didn't gain anything from this. What does he gain from that? Zero. And then I started to feel a bit ashamed for the types of questions I've been asking him my whole life, for the types of thoughts that I have about all this. And so I remember the next time he asked me, what do you want? And again I answered, I want you. But already it was different than the first time I answered that. Because to some degree I understood in my own mind more clearly what it was that I wanted. I wanted first to be happy like he was. Because when I met Guruji as a 20-something-year-old, he was a very happy person, all the time. He is eternally happy, but I'm saying he was showing it externally too. He had the biggest smile on his face, everything was just joy, partying. He would be dancing up and down every kirtan. Those were the days, right? And I said, I want you. What I really meant at that time was, I want to be like you. I remember the next time he asked me, what do you want? And I again said, I want you. And every time he asked me, I gave him the same answer from that day onwards, but every time it was different. Because every time my understanding of what it was that I was asking for was different. And so, as you progress through your life, as you understand more clearly what it is that you don't want and what it is that you do want, your conversations with God will change. Your objectives in life will change. And it's from that space, now 15 years after those events, that I'm telling you, why are you wasting your time? You don't have to repeat the same mistakes everybody else does. That's the whole point of Sangha, that you can actually learn from each other, so that you don't have to do the same things. If you wouldn't learn from each other, then what's the point of Sangha? Just go back to your rooms, shut the door, live your life. You're supposed to learn from each other. And if I'm telling you Asking for everything else apart from for God Himself is a waste of your time. Maybe it's not just because I've read it in some book. Maybe. And I'm not saying I'm there, not at all. But you could bet your life that if that question were asked to me today, the thought of anything other than God would not even enter my mind as an option for what I would ask for. There's no competition even. Krishna says that His abode is the Akshara Brahma. It is the only eternal abode. Everything else decays and dies. Everything else comes and goes. I don't know about you, but I'm not very interested in decaying and dying. Thank you very much. So therefore, however way you come to this realization for yourself, ask yourself, is that undecaying abode what you truly want in your life? And if not, why not? And if it is what you want, then why are you still doing things other than that? Other than things only for that? That is the question. And that only you can answer, not me. But please, don't waste your time. Because you cannot have multiple wishes, multiple destinations. You have only one. And that destination will not be the one you want when you're sitting here in Vrindavan feeling spiritual. It will be the one that is the sum total of your whole life. It's your whole life. Where does that lead you to? It's your thoughts when you're not sitting here in the temple. It's your thoughts 24/7. So if you can make your goal crystallized and clear, irrespective of where you are, irrespective if the prasad is tasty, irrespective of Krishna's looking attractive or not, then you have understood something. Then you are clear. So you've all heard the motto, no? Be simple. But be simple doesn't mean to be stupid. Being simple doesn't mean to be poor. It means to be clear. To be simple means to be uncomplicated. So if I ask you the question, who are you? You answer me immediately. If I ask you, what do you want? You answer me immediately. And if I ask you the final question, and how are you going to get it? You answer me immediately. If you cannot, you are very complicated. And don't think that that's a good thing. We sometimes think being spiritual means to be mysterious. No, garbage, that's nonsense. That's what people who have no clue where they're going pretend to be. Don't fall for this mysticism, mysterious nonsense. Who are you? I'm a devotee of God. What do you want? I want God. How are you going to get it? By following every word my Guru tells me. It's not complicated. It's very clear. Jai Gurudev.